now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, and welcome everyone to our Trends in Mobile Testing webinar from XBOSoft. I'd like to first share a little with you about the company. XBOSoft is a software testing firm that's been around since 2006. We offer software testing and QA consulting in various platforms from mobile to web software for various industries from healthcare to finance. And we have offices around the world from San Francisco to Beijing, as well as in Europe and the Netherlands. Now to move on to today's house rules, everybody is in listen-only mode. So you can post your questions in the chat panel, and we will try to field them throughout the webinar, as well as at the end, depending on time. You can also post your questions on Twitter, so feel free to post them at XBOSoft. We will try to field those questions as well. Otherwise, we will email you answers directly or answer them in our blog. You will also receive a recording of today's webinar posted on YouTube following the session. Now, to introduce you to today's participants and speakers, I am Carla, and together with Sabrina, we help meet your webinar needs. Next, I pass you on to XBOSoft CEO Phil Liu, who will introduce you to our expert panel. Phil?
Thanks, Sabrina. It's great to be here. Today we've got a great panel that we've gathered up to talk about mobile testing and a lot of the trends that are going on. First, I'd like to introduce Lloyd Bell. Hi, Lloyd. How you doing there?
Hey, Phil. Nice to be here.
Yeah, Lloyd has been working in software and hardware testing for quite a long time. He's kind of revealing his age there, but we won't say too much about that. Looks like you're getting a little bit more gray in your beard there.
Oh, yeah.
Lloyd is from Portland and now works for Crowd Compass. So welcome, Lloyd, and we're glad to have you here, and I'm sure that you're going to be able to contribute a lot from your years of experience in the QA field and now working for Crowd Compass, which is one of the leading companies that develops those apps for conferences. So I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you.
Next, we've got Melissa and Melissa Tondi. Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
And Melissa currently at AOL works with Agile teams, and I've seen Melissa present at many conferences on mobile testing, and so I thought she would be a great addition to the panel in being able to share her experience in working in software testing and quality, and especially in mobile testing. So welcome, Melissa.
Thanks.
Great to be here.
Great to be here. Thanks.
And lastly, we have Raj. I won't try to pronounce your last name, Raj. I'll just say Raj. But Raj from Texas. You know, we know Raj from Texas. I met Raj at a conference as well, speaking on mobile testing, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand with that thick Texas accent, but we'll try today. Hi, Raj. How you doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah. Raj works in mobile testing, and he's an expert and really does hands-on stuff. And I really learned a lot from Raj in the conference talks that I listened to. So that's why I thought he would be a great guy to have here to offer his experience. So here we go. Let's get started here. So the first thing, why we're here. A few months ago we did a survey which basically attempted to and really asked a lot of questions on the directions of mobile testing, what kinds of platforms people were testing, the types of testing that people were working on, and the difficulties they were encountering. And we do this just kind of as a service because we like to find out what, the direction of the market, and publish the report. It's available on our website. You can see it there. Anybody can download it. It's free. And basically just to, contribute to the testing community. And so what I thought we would do is invite a panel of experts and have them discuss some of the issues that we found, and then share that. So here we go. Here's the agenda for today. Firstly, we're going to talk about, why mobile. I don't need to discuss that too much, but also mobile testing basics, like I said, platforms, how people do their testing on actual devices or simulators and things like that. Next, we'll move on to the types of testing, security testing, functional testing, automated testing, so forth. And then we'll go into the future and what people think mobile testing will morph into as the years go by. So firstly, why mobile? Maybe one of the panelists can start talking in terms of why they're in mobile, and what is it that they like about mobile testing and some of the challenges that they're facing today. Maybe Raj, why don't you go ahead and start? Can you start it off?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question which people ask, why mobile, right? But people asked that question about 2-3 years ago, and since the past 3 years, almost everything is mobile right now. If you go to a website, they immediately ask, hey, do you have an app? Do you have a mobile website? Because everyone has mobile devices, right? And so right now, I was reading an article, I think it said, oh, right, Google. So Google, I don't know whether some people may have heard it, but if you actually do a Google search, Google ranks your site saying whether it's mobile optimized or not. So that's how important mobile has become. And of course, there's so many challenges I've faced, but before I start, I could see what other people think about why mobile is important.
Okay, I'll let the other panelists just kind of chime in and let us know, what their thoughts are on trends and challenges and so forth.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So about 2.5 years ago, in my previous position, I was kind of charged with helping to solve the problem of how do mainstream test teams. So those companies that use software, not necessarily developing software for consumption, but are using software in the day-to-day and developing internally, those teams really didn't have a lot of investment in either time, people, or tools or other resources. And so the biggest challenge that I had seen in the 2.5-3 years that I had been running professional services that specifically concentrated on mobile testing was how do teams that didn't have the unlimited budget to add people or tools, how will they then go ahead and support all of the new permutations of devices that come in? So being more efficient and developing techniques that help teams be more efficient while continuing to support not only the desktop or client-server focus, but then also kind of the new frontier of mobile. So those are the two big challenges that I'd seen, and I still continue to see talking with other clients and other companies.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And you mentioned devices. I mean, everybody always asks us, what devices do we test? So and that's still a challenge even today. Lloyd, what do you think about what's going on these days?
I really love the mobile market. Even as history's progressed, things have gotten smaller, and this is like the perfect time to get into for testing, to get into mobile, because there's not a lot of leaders out there. There's not a lot of information about how to go about the proper way of doing tests. So the interesting thing is, like, if you want to get into a challenge, right, now is the time to get into mobile, because mobile is becoming the hub for a lot of new technology. You're looking at Apple Pay, you're looking at Google Watch, and then you have your Apple Watch now, and you have Google Glass. All those things are coming up to pair with your phones, right, to give out this information. And you have new technologies like beacons that are coming out. They all require the phone to be used. So when you're looking at the future of testing, it's inconceivable not to have that in your repertoire of skills, so that you can take that along, and if you jump into it now, you can be a great subject matter expert on this and lead the pack, for the future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting. Someone wrote me the other day and asked me, do you think mobile automation is worth it? And because they said, well, because mobile projects are usually really, really short, and so it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do automation, does it? And And I said, my response back was, well, mobile applications are becoming more and more complicated. Like you said, there's just so much stuff going on. So it's really interesting that, I mean, they're not just information sites that just come and go anymore. So,
So just to add,
and here's,
just to add to what you were saying, Phil, yeah, I face the same thing where people say, you know what, we don't want to think about mobile automation right now, and they keep doing just manual testing, which is fine. But the point is, as you were saying, now everything is becoming mobile, and you have, say for example, I work for Orbitz, and we have like 8 apps, and it's close to impossible to test all 8 apps on different devices, different features, right? So sometimes, so it actually has become really important to actually think about automation because of the large scale of mobile apps.
Right, right. And a lot of things are moving towards app versus mobile web. Do you guys, did any of you guys can talk about that a little bit, why maybe that is?
About mobile web?
Yeah, you can see that the trend is really to have native apps, it looks like, in terms of the percentage of time split in developing. This is what the survey came out with. I don't know if that's your guys' experience or not. People having real apps on it versus just accessing the web with the mobile phone.
Yeah, I'd say that, in my experience, most of the time when I poll attendees in sessions that I've spoken to, I think when we think mobile, I think the first thing that pops to our mind is native apps or hybrid apps that kind of containerized, right? So, but I think, and that might be possibly a misconception that when we think mobile, not only do we have to concentrate on the apps, but we actually have to ensure that the user experience on their device, regardless of how they're accessing the product, is going to be the same, and it's going to be a delightful user experience. So I try and emphasize that mobile really kind of encompasses both web and apps, but it seems like the default is that generally people are putting more emphasis on developing for apps first and then mobile web access after.
Right, right. Lloyd, you guys, your Crowd Compass applications are native apps, is that right?
Yeah, actually, so we support natively iOS and Android, and then we also have a web-based platform for our attendees and planners too. So we kind of encompass all the different platforms that are out there. And then natively it is pure app. We're pulling straight from the servers, on the apps itself. And we try to minimize the mobile, the web portion of it as much as we can, because we want to personalize the app to the experience of whoever's going to be using the phone. And iOS people and Android people have 2 different expectations.
Yeah, that's true. That gets back to Melissa's comment about user experience, which we're going to talk about a little bit later.
And Phil, so
go ahead.
Just to add to what Melissa and Lloyd were talking about, so looking at this statistic on the slide, I can, in my experience, I know why it's shifting this way, because the problem with mobile web is, at least for iPhone, you have only probably 3-4 screen sizes, but when it comes to Android, you have like so many different manufacturers like HTC, Samsung, Motorola, and they have different screen sizes. So what happened like 2 years ago was when people were coming up with the mobile web, they weren't getting optimum experiences in different screen sizes. They had a lot of problems with viewing the mobile web page. So slowly, that's the reason, in my experience, I've seen that people have shifted to native apps because it, at least to a certain extent, gives more seamless experience than actually opening a mobile web page on different devices with different screen sizes.
Okay. How about some of the differences and problems that we have in mobile testing, which one do you think is the biggest one here? You're looking at this very carefully, I can see. Anybody have any comments on it?
You know, I would say I think the user experience expectations right now, and not that it's something that is hard to solve, especially with test professionals where, you know, we should, you know, at some point in time come at it as a user advocate or as a user would to ensure kind of that great user experience. But I think that because you know, the rise of the 1 to 5 stars ratings in there, that we've given the user the power to really, you know, either rake us over the coals when something is not good or be super delighted with us. So I think, you know, being able to manage user expectations and be proactive with the experience that the user is going to have is something that we haven't really, I think, gotten our head around, because we've given that power back to them and they can, you know, essentially write whatever they want concerning that app there. So that's always been something I think that's been introduced now just with the rise of the internet and everything there. But that's been something that I've tried hard to maintain, but I feel like we still have a long way to go there.
Right. I mean, who would think of giving power to the users? That's terrible.
Actually, seeing this slide looks like, yeah, each one has its own importance when it comes to mobile testing. But one factor which people often overlook is security issues, because no one thinks about security. I know people think about user experience and hardware and all other things, but they often fail to realize that security is also an important factor. So, for example, what about 3 or 4 months ago? So the Delta native app, it displayed the boarding pass of a person. Then you could just go to the URL and change some number, and you could actually see a boarding pass of another person, right? and that was a major issue, right? And people often do not pay attention to it. So in my experience, whenever we do mobile testing, we look at some of the things like whether data is stored in local storage, whether sessions are terminated, whether you use temporary session keys, and you want to make sure all those kind of things are kind of covered to a certain extent.
That's really interesting, because, you know, data is the new currency, and people are going to be wanting to get at it for sure.
You know, and I'd like to follow up on what Melissa said, you know, about the user expectation. And you know, whenever you're building apps, the person that's going to be using it is always looking for that personalized experience. I mean, you're using your hands, you're reading, you're doing a lot of things. And apps nowadays, no matter how much effort you put into testing, if that user expectation isn't there, they're going to throw it away. You're going to get a bad review on the app stores, and people are just not going to download it and use it. So, I mean, it is a huge thing, and that is actually a lot overlooked in testing, is not that the design is working, but whether or not the design of your product is correct, and will your end user actually use it like, you know, they want to use it. If you look at all the different platforms out there, you know, like Sony and Microsoft with their Xbox and PlayStations, right? They're building these controllers that have to go through these rigorous tests to see if like users will actually use it, or else that whole platform will be dead. So I really love that message that Melissa had.
Yeah, I think we've certainly gotten beyond just you know, working and not getting a blue screen, right? So let's talk about mobile test team sizes. What do you guys think here? You know, it seems like mobile test teams are fairly small. Is that has that been your? But how about your team, Lloyd?
We started out small. You know, we're kind of growing. We're in the 15 up category right now, and I'm actually going to India tomorrow just to build out a new test team there too. But I attribute the team sizes through lack of information about how to test mobile. And typically when development teams or new companies are coming on board, they don't want to spend a lot of money trying to get mobile right whenever you can develop it quickly. You can, especially in Agile, the thing is fail fast. You can fail fast and recover in mobile pretty easily. Mm-hmm. So small team sizes are great, and then once you start getting to more complicated things, you start growing that team out.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when you say fail fast, I mean, if you deliver a bad app, I don't know if you can recover quite quickly though.
Sure. Yeah.
But as far as the team sizes, you're right there. People are, you can see the difference between 2013 and 14. Team sizes are on the increase. Is that what you guys have found, Melissa or Raj? You want to contribute on that?
Sure, I could chip in. So I kind of had the same situation as Lloyd, where we started off small and we're slowly growing. Like right now, when I joined, there were 2 people, and then I recruited 3 more. So we have 5 testers and about 12 or 13 developers. Sometimes people come and ask me, man, you have 13 developers, that means you need 13 QAs. No, it doesn't work that way. The point is, it all boils down to how skillful, or it all boils down to what their skill set and what they actually do. So usually, in my experience, I've seen it's like 50%, say, in a QA team of 10. I mean, in a team of 15 people, probably 25 to 30% would be QAs. That's what I've seen in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen equal number of developers and QAs in mobile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. How about at your organization, Melissa?
Yeah, so this is interesting. This is actually one of those areas where I've seen some different trends. So I'd say probably 5 years ago or so, when I was running a rather large 150 plus QA organization, we started out by having specific mobile testing, a specific mobile testing team, so that their only job was to test on mobile and to ensure that, which meant that they were very siloed and not as able to be embedded into the Agile teams, since that was the method that we were using at the time, Agile Scrum. But now what I've seen, especially in the last 2 to 3 years, is companies really kind of absorbing the testing into their existing test teams. So then it becomes a matter of either training the existing test teams to be able to support the new technology, or hiring specifically, but then embedding them back into the test team. So I haven't, I certainly have seen separate mobile testing teams in large organizations, but I think the size of companies that I've worked with or have consulted to, I think that they're really kind of now absorbing mobile testing as part of the general offerings of services within the existing test teams, because they have both the product and domain expertise, and now it's a matter of overlaying the training on the new skill set around mobile testing and the tools that then support that.
Okay, that's interesting. So I guess test teams are becoming agile. Everybody's testing everything, kind of. That's really interesting.
That's a trend that I've seen, is certainly, yeah.
Now, Lloyd, you mentioned that you're going to India.
Yeah.
So are you using a third party, or you guys have an office over there, or how's that work?
Yeah, no, we have an office out there. Our company's pretty large. The thing is, like, going back to what Melissa's saying, you can actually accomplish a lot with a small test team. We are creating thousands of apps on a regular basis. If we look at the App Store, we've probably got 6,000 apps just on there. And I am only going to be increasing my test team by about 3, and we're planning on doubling our numbers for this next year. So yeah, for India, tomorrow I'm going out there. It's a 24-hour flight. It's amazing, and yeah, I'm going to have lots of fun. But and it's supposed to be like 110, by the way, out there. But Steven actually owns a company, the company out there. There's a headquarters over there too, and within it, we're actually building out the team, just within the company itself.
Yeah, I've been to India myself. It is pretty hot over there. So good luck.
I picked the right time of the year.
Anybody else want to chime in on that in terms, not in terms of India, but whether or not you have third-party mobile testing?
See, Phil, I was going to talk about India, and you cut me short there, so that's okay.
Okay.
So, third-party mobile testing. So, I've had experience in this. In my previous company, we had an offshore team I was handling, and now at Orbitz, we have teams in the South America region, in Argentina and Uruguay. Um, it, you know, third-party mobile testing sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. So it really, really important to know what you're getting into. Like, for example, I've had experiences where people offshore, I had to tell them each and everything, and the time I spend in telling them stuff, I could have rather done it myself. But on the other hand, I've seen really highly skilled people in offshore who are proactive and keep doing stuff, right? So it's really, really important to actually know what you're getting into and what company or group you're hiring when you offshore your testing.
Right, right. I think it's just like any other testing, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, in terms of mobile testing basics, now we're going to talk about some of the platforms supported and devices and so forth. And, what do you guys think in terms of platforms supported? Does this kind of represent what your thinking is as well? I was surprised that the survey had Windows on there. So many people supported Windows, but that's just the way it turned out. And maybe you guys find the same thing.
I'm actually surprised BlackBerry was there, but anywho.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think this definitely, I think the emphasis we tend to pick the top two, Android and iOS, because we know that market share both nationally and internationally also supports that as well. I was a little surprised to see the Windows as well that high up, and it really. I think what platforms do you support from a testing standpoint versus what are your users actually coming into your site or into your app on? I think those two questions probably worth clarifying there. But yeah, I mean, I think certainly Android and iOS, and I think really the platforms from Android, and we know this that there are the famous Android permutation slide that I even use in my slide decks, but Android obviously has the biggest challenge because there are so many permutations around Android, whereas we know that iOS users generally are taking the first top 2 to 3 updates and are almost always on top of that. So, but yeah, this definitely I think is representative, minus the Windows piece, but yeah.
Well, I think this is from a company standpoint, not the user standpoint, in terms of what platforms they're actually testing on and developing, so that make sure that they have that platform supported. I guess they just don't want to be left out of the. People still think Windows is a big deal, but I don't know.
You know what would be interesting, Phil, to answer this question, like what platforms do you support? I see the slide here, but I think the data would have changed if you had probably narrowed it down a little bit. In terms of native apps, the answer is really simple. If you're going to have an Android, iOS, and a Windows app, of course you're going to test on all 3 platforms. But the answer becomes complicated when you talk about mobile web. That's where it's going to be interesting to see how the data goes, because if you're a company in Europe, probably Windows is a really important factor to consider, because other day I was reading that Windows market share has been steadily gaining in Europe, and we just talk about US, but people fail to realize Europe. So I was just curious to see, this question would be interesting for a mobile web guy.
Right, right. Well, that's interesting because some of our clients they're all using. In Europe, the ones are all using Microsoft development platforms.
Right.
This looks very close to what we're experiencing, except iOS is actually at the top. when we're looking at the mobile web stuff, iOS is still like really killing it. I think a lot of people are using the tablet, like the iPads, in to conferences, especially with what we deal with. So on the attendee and the planner side, it's iOS for us first, and Android closely behind. But we still have a great Windows and even some BlackBerry markets going on.
Okay.
One thing I didn't see in this slide is Amazon.
Yeah, Fire. Yeah.
The reason
Okay.
the reason is usually the odds are if you have an Android app, it's easy to convert it into an Amazon app because it's pretty much Android, but with some stuff added to it. So,
Right.
like for example, Orbits, we never even market our Amazon app, but we actually have an Amazon app because we just tweak our Android code base, and then it's now an Amazon app. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, and I would say to even add on to what Raj had mentioned, we had done several testing engagements on Samsung apps. So where specifically was designed for the Samsung platform, certainly the Android piece, but the delivery via the TV was very interesting as well. So being able to then quickly enabling and getting all the right equipment and all the other resources in order to test kind of those outlier types of platforms is an interesting challenge too.
So you're actually saying that Samsung is a big enough following and a big enough difference within its Android flavor to justify really putting specific resources towards that.
And that was something that we had done as a custom engagement for a client. So in that particular situation, yes.
Wow.
And I would support Melissa's comment saying Samsung testing on Samsung because predominantly a lot of people use Samsung phones. And just one more fact is they're trying to go away from Google's Android operating system, and they're getting into their own operating system, which is the Tizen operating system in China and Europe. So it's been interesting to see how things change in another year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, talking about Samsung, how many devices do you guys find that you guys are testing? Lloyd, what do you think about that? You guys test a lot of devices, real devices?
So we actually have a pretty large hardware cabinet that we have over 100 devices in that we test on a regular basis, and then also we're using tools like AppToAc to supplement the ones that we don't have.
Okay. What do you guys think, Melissa or Raj?
Yeah, this is one of those areas that I've spoken on a lot about too. So, like I said, there are those companies where app development or mobile development is their bread and butter for what I can kind of consider mainstream companies. So where they're not in the business for app development, they're doing it to support their own internal offerings or some product offerings. This is one of those areas where we put a lot of time and effort into developing what we call our device matrix, essentially, and the device matrix technique. So we have, at least in the national markets, we can pretty confidently have a high percentage in the low to mid 90% on a matter of between 6 and 8 devices, both for Android and iOS. So, I think this is again another challenge, right? I think every team and every company would love to have a plethora of devices in the hundreds where you can test, or have a budget to go out to some of those third-party vendors that provide those services. But for teams where device management it quickly becomes a headache. I think that being creative in developing a solution on how to maintain that is something that we put some emphasis on.
Right, I think you're right. I mean, that's one of the first questions we get when we start off a mobile testing engagement is, what platforms do we need to test in order to have 90% coverage, and of course that varies as time goes on, and as well as, the user base of that particular software.
Right, and just to add to this, again, for mobile device test, it varies largely on what you're testing. If it's going to be a mobile website, then you would probably, what I did was I had a HTC Samsung Motorola, and a pure Google phone. And also, yes, screen size, resolution, operating systems, form factors, they come into play. So collectively, I think I had about 9 to 10 devices, and I had a similar kind of thing Melissa was mentioning in terms like the device matrix. But in my current role, I'm on the native app side, on the iOS side, so it makes my job a lot more easier. Where I have an iPad mini, an iPad, iPhone 5, 5S with different operating system versions like 8.1, 8.2, 8.1.3, and I vary the operating system versions, and it helps me to get more coverage.
Yeah, and one other thing to think about whenever you're doing mobile device testing is that, especially if you're dealing with Google, the Nexus product, which is Google's line, gets updates a lot quicker than any other product line, right? Because they are the Google thing product. So whenever we're looking at testing, we have to put a Nexus in the mix because they're the first ones that get the updates. And then sometimes you might fall behind. Some of the Samsungs, usually it depends on the provider, but they usually come in maybe a month later, sometimes not even 6 months later for their next updates. And then we're also mixing up with your tablets. You got the 7-inch, you got your 10-inch tablets. You have your iPad where you have the minis, you have your old generations, and then all the different versions that you have to support. Those are one of the reasons why we try to keep up to date as much as possible, especially when we have customers that come in and complain about a certain device not working properly. We have to try to analyze that as fast as possible.
Do you test on the iPad 1? That's what I have.
No, we have our lowest supported now is like the 3rd generation, I believe.
Okay. Okay. So what about testing across different types of networks? Testing on AT&T and T-Mobile and all these other smaller ones as well. Do you guys think about that or worry about it?
I'd say I worry about it more than think about it. I think this is one of the hardest challenges that I think we have. Number one, unless you have a great relationship with the product manufacturers or the device manufacturers, and where you have a partnership where they'll provide the devices or either simulate or purchase network plans. This is where it's both time and budget consuming here. So I think this is one area that we could see a lot of growth and a lot of improvement in. I think that's why I kind of mentioned I worry about it more because I don't think that we have the ability, again, going back to unlimited resources, to be able to really thoroughly test these types of areas.
Right. Yep. And I think also, an issue is, we have a lot of international clients, and so I'm wondering how do you guys think about testing in different countries as well as the networks in those different countries?
We do actually. Orbits, we have, of course, like we buy companies in Australia, China, Denmark, Sweden. So the point is, it becomes really important for us to test in different countries. And for example, we have a couple of apps where you can actually change the language. You can change it to like 20 different languages. So it kind of gets complicated. It was really complicated in terms of choosing what language to test on. So what we did was we took some usage statistics from Google Analytics and other tools, and we found which region has the highest number of users and from which location. And then we were able to narrow down 20 languages to 5. And we used Google Translate and a couple of other ways of making sure the language translation is happening appropriately. And most common issue we find is when we change language from English, say Chinese, it's funny, some words will be in English, some words will be in Chinese. So that's a really common thing. You can immediately do a smoke test and find out issues by doing that. But that's pretty much my story of how we deal with it.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Sometimes in Chinese there is no Chinese word for some things, though, as well.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the different types of testing. I think, Lloyd, you had mentioned that security was a big deal. It doesn't look like too many people are thinking about it yet, right?
That was actually
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
talking about security.
Oh,
Yeah,
Raj, okay, yeah. Does this kind of represent what you guys think of what's going on out there? And most people, I guess, worried about just plain functionality, and then usability is next. Is there something missing here, you think, that people are thinking, oh, they should really focus more on performance or something like that?
I'm pleasantly surprised that usability has such a high percentage. I would have guessed that it would probably be hanging around closer to the security or the automated piece of it. So that's great. I think user is king right now, and I think companies, not just from a testing standpoint do we need to look at usability, but just from an overall software development lifecycle, we need to think about usability. And so we see trending towards the designers and UX folks that are embedded within the Agile teams, and they're getting a hold of the design and running through specific user-based tests early and often, which is a great trend that we're seeing. So I'm really, I think I'm pleasantly surprised that usability is so high on this one.
I actually. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Raj, you had mentioned that you thought automation was something that was a good idea, especially for some of you guys that are continuing to develop apps just like they were huge apps, just keep putting out new versions. I'm curious what tools you guys use.
So right now we using Appium. Just started using Appium so that we could run automation on simulators and the physical devices. And we use automation in scenarios where something has to be repeated many number of times. Like, for example, our Orbits app, the very normal critical flow is you choose, say, for example, you're booking a flight, you choose a source and a destination and go all the way to the booking screen and then click on book, right? So those kind of functionalities which are pretty common and has to be done repetitively, we view that as a good candidate for automation. But that doesn't mean that it replaces manual testing, because we need to do manual testing to see rendering issues which automation cannot catch. So in terms of tools, yes, we use Appium and then Robotium for the Android, and there's also another framework, Espresso, for Android, which we have been using in our company.
Okay. Any of you other guys have comments on some of these other types of testing, maybe performance or something like that? You guys work on that?
This figure, it matches everything that I expect. I mean, there's not a lot of very good tools out there. I mean, there's a lot of tools, but there's not something that's all-encompassing. So I can totally see that manual functionality, usability being at the very top, because the performance stuff, sure, you can hook up some tools to it. Security, there's already a lack of knowledge about security in general in the industry. And in automation for this, especially when you start dealing with multiple platform support, if you're a straight Android guy, sure, let's go. There's some tools you can use, Robotium, go use MonkeyTalk, But if you are diving into Android as well as iOS as well as mobile web base, you don't have a perfect tool. Appium is the closest thing that comes to it, and we're kind of using that also. But we are still trying to find a good ROI for a lot of the automation testing versus manual for us in creating it.
Yeah, well, using Appium is not easy. It's not rocket science, but it's not that easy. We find that as well. So this is all about the UX testing again, Melissa. I thought maybe we would talk about a little bit, emphasize it. Do you guys? I know that Melissa thinks this. What do you guys think about UX testing? Is something that you focus on, or is it something that comes last, or is it something that you do only if you have a bad rating in the App Store? How does that work for you? How does that work for you guys, Lloyd?
No, yeah, we heavily focus on it. UX and UI are part of our sprint teams. Like they're embedded just like our QA are. I actually have a guy that is 20% part UX as well as testing. This is huge. Customer experience is huge for our company, especially when we're creating as many apps as we are.
Right.
You know, we have 250,000 people, you know, using our apps on a daily basis. So we want to make sure that, you know, their experience is at the best possible.
Well, that's interesting. You said you have UX people as part of your sprint teams. Do any of you other guys have that, Raj or Melissa?
Yeah, in my team, we do have user experience folks and product folks whose main job is to make sure there's nothing difficult for the user to go through in terms of flows in the app and things like that. But in terms of user experience testing, yes, I feel it's really, really important, and we do different scenarios which a user will do probably when using our apps. And I think, Phil, you mentioned one of your presentations. I think on an average, a person spends 30 seconds on an app. And if he doesn't get what he's supposed to get, he just goes to a competitor. And we cannot afford to do that, especially in a competitive market like the travel market, for example. So we are fighting with so many other, competing with so many other travel companies. So we want to make sure a user can pretty much reach any flow within 2 or 3 clicks. If it's more than that, then there's something wrong. So user experience is really important.
Yeah, I found that when I downloaded your app, and I said, geez, I just can't figure this out. And right around 29 seconds, I just gave up. Well, let's keep going here. And then what about in terms of the future of mobile testing? This is really interesting because there's a question here from Anthony, and Anthony says, wearables, home automation, and car technology, how will this change in terms of using it on mobile devices, and how will it change mobile testing? Any of you guys want to attack that one?
I mean, I think, you know, I think this is the more that we have the Internet of Things, or how I like to say the Internet of Everything, or Internet of Me, however you choose to say it. I think it's, you know, it's kind of the, you know, 10 plus years ago when one of the biggest challenges before mobile ever came into, you know, into existence, we were trying to figure out how do we support all of the different permutations of browsers and operating systems. And every team that I'd ever worked with and spoken to always thought that, you know, that was one of their biggest challenges. And so you think about that, and now it's on steroids, because every single wearable device that is now networked or connected via the internet will just continue to create more and more permutations. So, you know, I see it getting more challenging versus less, which means that I think we need to be creative in our thinking on how do we tackle and become more efficient in what to test. It's not just the right answer is to automate everything or to just test everything and add more time and time and time to the schedule, but being smarter about it and figuring out, is there redundancy that we can remove, or is there a way for us to do a lot more risk-based testing and using all the data that we can get our hands on in order to develop a much more specific and efficient test strategy? So I think that now that we are introducing even more internet-connected devices into our day-to-day, it's going to be even more important for us to solve that from an efficient standpoint.
And I agree with Melissa, and just to add to it, I think the word here is integration testing, in the sense it becomes so important to actually do integration testing, especially when you have hardware and software interacting. Like, for example, I wear a Fitbit band, and I was in Chicago, then I went to a conference in San Diego last month, and Fitbit couldn't, my hardware device couldn't figure out the time change. So the app was going bonkers, it like showing random calorie counts and stuff. And I was really thrilled that I found the issue, but apparently it was a known issue when I went through the website. But the point is, even the simplest thing can go wrong. So it's integration testing is going to be really, really important when it comes to wearable technology and like hardware and software interacting, mobile web and the native app interacting. So.
And how about, I guess, how's Crowd Compass, or what do you think about this, Lloyd?
I mean, mobile is a huge thing for us. It's the bulk of our business.
Right.
I really see mobile, especially on the phone side, being turned into like a hub of information for the users.
Right.
We're diving into technologies like Beacon. We're looking at giving messages to customers when they arrive through a door. Guiding them where to go. Where are their rooms? We look at Apple Pay. Where you can just walk up and it uses their phone to pay for things. It is becoming the hub of all the internet tools that you can just put into it, and soon it will be this tool that gives you all this information only, and it utilizes what's around in the world by you. So
right. I mean, I think that with all this integration, and the thing that scares me is the data. That who owns the data, who can get to the data, and how sensitive some of this data is. You see on this graphic here, there's an NFC patch, and of course that's collecting data about your body, whatever it is. Could be your heart rate or your blood sugar or things like that. But I would only want myself to have access to that.
Right.
Right, that's why you should be careful of Apple, Google, and the NSA. They have all the data.
Yeah, right. Well,
and which is why security is so important as well.
Yeah, you don't know exactly what data is being collected, and a lot of us are willing to. We don't read the whole disclosure statements, or just press I accept. I mean, how many of you guys do that? Do you guys do that, right?
Sure.
Or do you read the whole thing? Do you read all 10 pages of the agreement? I don't think anybody does that. And so we're willing to sacrifice our privacy for convenience, basically. And
that's the reason I blocked everyone from Facebook, because I couldn't handle it anymore. They random people look at my profile and then do things, and it's like crazy. You're talking about privacy. Facebook, man, they need to do something the way they do stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's about it. Do you guys have any closing statements on what you think in terms of maybe people that are thinking about getting into mobile testing or anything like that? Or Lloyd, you had mentioned that you thought it was a really good area.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anybody thinking about testing is getting in and diving into some area that is not very known, but kind of being on the same fence as everybody else. Mobile testing is where it's at. Everybody.
You must be recruiting people.
We are. Yeah, come on down.
Okay.
Especially if you're in India in a couple days.
Yeah. Any of you other guys? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say I think I kind of have said this a couple of times already today, but I think it's our landscape of what to test is going to be turned on its side, really, because we won't physically be able to support the number of devices and permutations soon.
Right.
And so being able to look down a little bit, a couple levels, and starting to really use risk-based testing much more, and incorporate tools, not just one tool necessarily, but several tools to get the job done. But this is really where I think the art and the skill of software testing and designing strategies really will come into play. So I think, in addition, of course, mobile's hot, and gaining the technical skills and understanding the technical configurations around it is something that any good tester should be doing already. But then really kind of thinking the way that we've previously looked at testing will be turned on its side, and we'll need to come up with different ways in order to be productive and efficient.
Yeah, well, Raj, there's one more question. Maybe you can address it before we close out. The question is, where do you go to find out the latest and greatest happenings in the mobile space? That's a big one, but maybe you can take a stab at it.
You just go to my website. Oh, I'm kidding.
Okay. Okay.
So, no, that's an interesting question, and I deal with it on a daily basis in the sense the information is so sparse, like in different ways. So what I usually do is I subscribe to RSS feeds, different mobile news websites, and I also read blogs and articles on mobile. I go to conferences and talk and network with people who do mobile stuff, and that's how I get my information. So yeah, it's no one word answer here. The point is information sparse, but you just use RSS feeds, networking and conferences and blogs and articles, and that helps a lot.
Right. Yeah, I know you're always coming to my talks and listening and going to the XBOSoft website and things like that and downloading things, right?
For me, before we close out, so two things I wanted to mention. Yes, right now it's mobile, and people should be open to learning anything related to mobile because you never know what's going to be useful. If you don't like mobile, then just go to big data, because mobile is going to be, not very common in the next 2-3 years, and then big data is the next big thing. It's just like how the .NET bubble came up, and then different things came up. So mobile is going to stay for probably 2-3 years, and then everyone is going to know different things about mobile stuff, and then the next thing is big data. So
yeah, I think so too. Mobile is actually a data, what I call it is a data funnel, a data aggregator. So thanks a lot, guys, for participating in the panel. It's been great, and you guys have had some great ideas and been able to flesh out some of our survey information. Sabrina, Sabrina?
Absolutely. Thank you so much to the panel, and thank you to you all for joining us today. We will be sending you the links to the YouTube video version and the slides, so look out for your emails for those. You are more than welcome to follow us on Facebook and on LinkedIn and Twitter. We post regularly on mobile testing. And if you visit our website, you will see lots of white papers talking about mobile testing in various formats. Okay, thank you, everybody. And that's it for today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Bye.